last night and seemed to work fine, but it's code, sometimes things happen. So when we come to that decision point, I'd love to get a feedback and we'll sort of go whichever way. It's a small audience, so I'd like to make sure that we keep it interactive. If you have questions, feel free to ask me while the talk is on. If it becomes too much, I'll sort of structure it, but feel free to ask questions and we can go along. We want to make sure that you get the most out of this session and understand what Concero is really targeted at. Okay, and I've got Stephen Barron, who's from the VMM 2000 team here, 12 team here as well, because there's a strong tie between Concero and VMM, and we can take any questions that comes through in this context. Alrighty, first, cloud computing is certainly in the hype phase of lots of people are interested in cloud, and sometimes it can get really confusing. What does cloud computing really mean? Now, NIST has actually done a really good job in defining what cloud computing is. They've got a really nice white paper posted on the NIST website. And so they sort of catalog the types of cloud computing into 3 distinct categories. There are other categories about public and private and so on and so forth. But these, in my opinion, infrastructure as a service, where a provider basically, which could be your own internal IT shop, will take a bunch of hardware infrastructure, aggregate it, and allow you to basically spin up VMs, spin down VMs in a far more agile manner than you can do today in your enterprise IT. I mean, I remember the day I used to run a fairly large simulation pool when I worked at Intel, or I shouldn't have said the name, but anyway, now that you know it, fairly large simulation pool for our engineers who would actually simulate a lot of the chip simulations, and our engineers were like kids in a candy store. They would eat up computing like anything, and so it was always hard to keep up, providing them with the right compute capacity. And I would have, it would have been awesome to have a capability which really allows me to spin up and spin down OS images in a really rapid environment without having to basically tell somebody in IT, hey, I need a server. They go down, they look at the stock and say, well, I'm sorry, I can't get you now. I have to order it. It'll take, a couple months to come down, blah, blah, blah. And, it takes a long, long time. So virtualization has certainly unshackled a lot of that capability and given you the agility to actually deploy in a fairly rapid manner. And infrastructure as a service basically puts some more formal structure around it and gives you the role-based access control and the ability to delegate the administration and ability to spin up these VMs in the context of just bare VMs as a service. Then a layer above that is platform as a service. And here, we really want the customer to not have to focus on the operating system image at all. We really want you to focus on the thing that provides value to you, which is your application. So you develop your application with a platform in mind, and then you let the hoster or the service provider, in this case Microsoft for Windows Azure, take care of the care and feeding of the hardware, the operating system image, and don't worry about it. Just focus on getting your application and leave the rest to the folks below that to go handle it for you. There are other examples of platform as a service as well. We've got Google App Engine, which is another good example of platform as a service. VMware has Cloud Foundry and Spring Source. That's another example of platform as a service. Salesforce is another example of platform as a service. So there are multiple examples of people in this domain. And then at the top is software as a service, where really you're focused on consuming an end finished product from the cloud. And while these names may seem new, but how long back did we get Hotmail? Decades back. That was a service, software as a service. You never had anything running on your premise. All you had was a machine with a browser, and I could send and receive email, and so on and so forth. So software as a service really is focused at giving you a finished end service that's running in the cloud. And obviously, we've got a ton of assets there. We got Office 365. We are hosting Dynamics up there for you. We got Windows Intune, which allows you to actually manage your client desktops, patch them and so on and so forth right from the cloud, so you don't need to install any software on your on-premise. So a couple of messages I want you to take away. First of all, cloud computing has a variety of different paradigms that we are talking of. Infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. And we in Microsoft have actually got assets across all these domains. In fact, it may come as a lot of surprise to you. We run huge data centers. I mean, just imagine the size of the data center which hosts the Windows Azure capacity, the Hotmail capacity. It's just tremendous. I had the opportunity to actually go down to a data center in Wenatchee in Quincy, Washington. I think that's a 1 million square foot facility. It's huge. I mean, really, really huge. And one of the things that because we operate these large data centers, what we really get an opportunity to do is to learn from our own operational people as to how they manage those data centers, get the best practices for them, and then provide those as products for you so that you can then use that knowledge, use the product to actually empower yourself and deploy it, employ those best practices for your own data centers. That's sort of the genesis of how we build a lot of our data center products. Okay, so from the perspective of Concero, Concero really focuses in managing services in the clouds, and in two types of clouds to be specific. We focus on infrastructure as a service, and we focus on platform as a service. So these are the two domains in which we allow customers who are using Concero to manage their applications and services. Okay, so I'll build out this slide, and so let me go back here. All right, so what's happening in the IT space is that we are seeing that in IT, there is a sort of two categories of people at a high level that IT is being split along. So there are the set of folks who basically order the storage, get the SANs, get the networks, get the switches, get the routers. And I'm not saying this is one person, obviously. There are a bunch of teams that get involved in this, who take all this capacity and then deploy operating system images and then offer it up for somebody else to use. I mean, I don't believe there is any corporation or there is anybody who actually deploys an OS and then does nothing with it. I mean, there are a few geeks like me who do it and enjoy looking at the screen, but I can assure you that a lot of you actually do it because after you've deployed the OS instance, you actually want to do something useful with it. You want to deploy an application, maybe deploy a file server role, and so on and so forth. Right? And the same thing happens in the context of Windows Azure as well. Except in Windows Azure, all that complexity that's required in setting up the SANs, and in fact, leave SANs aside, but setting up the storage, setting up the networks, getting the capacity to a point where somebody can do something useful, is done by Microsoft in their data centers. The net result, though, is that at the end of the day, you've got this abstraction called a cloud. And it's basically capacity that allows you to go then deploy applications onto that cloud capacity. Now, in the context of Microsoft, our IaaS offering, the infrastructure as a service offering, is built upon System Center and Hyper-V, right? We believe fundamentally that virtualization is the core building block for any kind of a cloud architecture. And it's true for Windows Azure as well. I mean, it's true for Windows Azure, and we certainly want it to be true for you in infrastructure as a service as well. And System Center actually brings a variety of assets to the table. We have Virtual Machine Manager, which allows you, VM management, VM deployment. We have Operations Manager, which gives you operations monitoring and alerts, and so on and so forth. We've got Service Manager, which helps you in ticket management, IT process management. And we've got Configuration Manager, which can allow you to deploy sort of patches and so on and so forth as well. And then lastly, we've got Orchestrator, which is a workflow engine which you can visually author workflows and sort of automate a lot of your processes in IT. Right? In the context of Windows Azure, it's a platform as a service offering. We certainly have Windows Azure. We have SQL Azure, which allows you to host your databases in the cloud. We've got Windows Azure App Fabric, which are a bunch of services that you can actually utilize in the cloud. I encourage you to actually go get some more information about App Fabric and the others as well. There's some really interesting services that developers can use with those capabilities. And traditionally, Microsoft has had a lot of tools that we provide for you for a customer on the right-hand side. But as the cloud computing, as cloud computing evolves and customers start adopting cloud computing, there is a need for providing a different set of tools on the consuming side of the equation. where the customer who's actually consuming these capacity does not have to worry about the complexity of the SANs and VLANs and networks and so on and so forth. You really want that customer to be able to really do it in a simple manner and not have to worry about the complexity. Just think of how Amazon Web Services works. You just log into the portal, pick an image, and you're off and running with an instance of Linux or Windows, right? It's a simple paradigm, and it's kudos to them that they've really hit a sweet spot in terms of particularly with small and medium businesses. Why would they ever want to run a large server in their premise when they can just go pick up an image like that, right? Now, similarly, you step back into the IT domain, and IT wants to do the same. Why do they want to be in the business of always deciding, okay, how many VMs do I need to spin up? Just empower your end users. Control what they can do, scope what access they have resources to, but empower them. It frees you up to actually focus on providing higher value-added services